we are. New digs, new faces, old faces, new agenda, old topic. So let's go ahead and get started. Can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Peck.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters.
Here.
Mayor, you have a forum.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's go ahead and start. Do we have any motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items?
I do.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you. I'd like to move to direct staff at their convenience to schedule a meeting outside of regular and study session meetings for the city council with a facilitator to discuss and amend rules of procedures and ethical behavior.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. I think we've already voted on this. Isn't it on the agenda?
We were waiting for the outcome.
Okay.
And since we have that, we will look to schedule that. But
Right.
I think there's an added component to this that wasn't on the.
All right, so let's vote. All in favor? Go ahead, Dr. Waters.
Could we just clarify the objectives we're going to accomplish in this session?
To amend the rules of procedure, to look at them and decide if there's any ethical, just so that we have a discussion among council on what we do going forward.
Could you be more specific about what we would be, the rules and procedures you think that we need to be specifically focused on?
I think that's what we need the session for, is to discuss what those would be, rather than to sit here in a meeting and take up the time to do that.
Well, I'll support a session, but I want to be real clear on what we're going to do with the session. So if it's is this a tutorial on ethics? What is it?
No. It is for council to look at our rules of procedure, which have not been looked at for 20 years, to see if we're following and that we're all on the same page, and that going forward, we all follow the same rules of procedure.
So long as that translates into meeting the same standards for ethical behavior, I'm down with it. I'll
Okay.
support that.
Councilmember Lago-Faring?
So, well, I just wanted to clarify, my understanding is that we would essentially come up with a consensus on how we would
Yes.
conduct ourselves during council, so we all have an agreement.
Yes.
So it's really not to amend or discuss or come up with different ideas or ethics. It's really just to look at what we have and come to a consensus on how we want to execute these procedures during council meetings.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is during council meetings.
No. Oh, yes, yes. Well, I don't know. You know what? The whole point is to discuss all of this as sitting down in a special session with a facilitator, and we would come up with how outside council, how council members should act with each other and with the public.
That makes sense to me, so long as it's in a public venue,
Of course.
at a time when the public can be here and we get a chance to do this with everybody who cares about this topic, having a chance to observe and listen.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Nobody else is in the queue. Let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously.
So was there one opposed?
No,
No.
it was unanimous.
Oh, I just thought we were raising our hands. That's why I raised my hand.
All right, sorry.
I got confused.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to public invited to be heard. We've got a short but powerful list of citizens tonight. Let's go ahead and start. Reminder, we've got different format, or same format, different venue. So you have 3 minutes. In that 3 minutes, we'll cut you off, no matter how awesome your comments are. So let's go ahead and start with Lauren Money.
Lauren Morley, sorry.
I'm sorry, say again?
Lauren Morley.
Lauren, oh, sorry. Lauren Money would have been awesome,
That would be better.
right?
All right.
If you start with your name and your address, that'll be great.
All right. Mr. Mayor, member of the council, my name is Lauren Morley. I live at 780 Divinity Street, Golden, Colorado, 80401. And I just wanted to talk briefly on the stance right now on metro districts. So my family has been in the home building and land development industry in Colorado for 30 years. We have a privately owned small local family company, and we have focused solely on single family homes, condominiums, and townhomes for first time buyers, empty nesters. Affordable housing is our niche, really. So our primary business, like I just said, has always been first time housing. We've been utilizing metro districts to assist in development financing since the 1980s. And we have been through several downturns. Our company was building in the 90s all the way through the early 2000s. We were right in the thick of it during the recession. And we have been through all the statutory revisions to special districts and laws. And we have also had several successful metro districts that have turned over to homeowner control. So I just would like to give a couple of specific examples because I feel like that's where our knowledge lays. One of the ones that I'm going to give, actually both the ones I'm going to give are in Commerce City. So, sorry, I got to focus here. Eagle Creek is a 383 home development of single family and duplex homes. It was formed in 1996 and it was issued approximately $4 million of debt to build infrastructure and amenities. These townhomes were all aimed to be affordable housing. So at the time, most of them were built between $125,000 to $175,000, being the sale price of the home. And we'd like to note that we regularly reached out to homeowners. I actually attend still to this day. I attend the HOA meeting every single year to try and convince homeowners to join the board. We have 3 homeowners who are currently on the board, and after not having been in the development for over 10 years, we're finally getting it fully turned over to the board. We have, sorry, I'm coming over a little cold right now, so I'm having some trouble here. Oh, okay, where am I? So at this particular metro district, the bonds have been refinanced twice. The interest rates and the mill levies have been reduced. In the last 2 years, not only have we redone the entire park, we've redone the playground, and we've replaced the entire perimeter wall. We've done all of this while we've also reduced the mill levies at this property, letting taxes come down. This is because this was a metro district that was formed, fully sold out, and was able to have a successful financials and taxes coming in over the years, which is how these metro districts are supposed to work. I can say specifically, this development couldn't have happened without a metro district. I know one of the things that have been said is that developers have this endless amount of funds that they can fund this infrastructure without metro districts. While that might be true for some national builders, for a company, is that my 3 minutes?
Yep.
I did not do a good job there.
You
Sorry,
did
guys.
great. Go
All right,
Metro
thanks.
Districts. That's what we heard. Thank you. All right. Diane Goldstein. Or Goldstein.
Diane Goldenstein
Sorry.
at 1707 Main Street. I'm on the board for the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. Been there for a few years, and they designated me to the board for the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative. And I'm going to jump the gun a little bit because you're going to get a presentation in a few minutes. But I would just like to say that we wholeheartedly support the Performing Arts Center initiative, and hopefully also a conference center to go along with that. And I think they will both be a great addition to the city of Longmont. It will put us on a cultural map, and we are in a central place between all of the universities and the other Front Range cities, so that we would be able to attract a large audience from around not just our county but the adjacent counties. We would be able to do a lot more than we're presently limited by the high school auditorium, because we have to share while they have their events. So sometimes we have basketball conferences the same time as the symphony is putting on their performances. So I just encourage you all to support the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldenstein. Sorry, just resetting things here. All right, cool. All right, Kevin Molshine.
Kevin Molshine, 5139 Old Ranch Drive, resident of Longmont, and a developer solely focused on providing workforce and affordable housing in the city of Longmont. Obviously, I'm here to speak in favor of districts, but I wanted to bring up a couple of positive points. I was at an LEDP meeting last week, and they had a lot of representatives from corporations that have recently moved here, never met them before, and they were asked what they liked about Longmont, what brings them here. One of the universal responses from them was the palpable and visible compassion in this town, how organized our charities are, how the first responders act. They were actually shocked when we were asked to give a quick overview of the fact that we're about to become the first city to have a neighborhood that's going to incorporate a campus for the homeless in a new home development. Not in the state, in the country. Not Los Angeles, not San Francisco, not Denver, not New York. Here. And it happened because of something very positive, which is 7 of you gave very clear direction that you wanted to solve this crisis, both homeless but also affordable housing crisis. And we still have the runway to make that happen because of the land that's still left to develop that way. Now, what happened was we came together in 2018 and made it reality. Part was your direction. Part was, frankly, your staff is very smart and hardworking and very diligent at it. And so I took great pride in what we're doing here. The second positive event, which I saw was, maybe it was 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, was actually the Mayor Pro Tem who said, let's get this council back together on issues. Because every one of you have the same objective, which is providing more housing at lower prices for working families and, frankly, for the homeless. And right now, it's right there for us. We have a great plan in place. We shouldn't be stopping and saying, taking away tools. Frankly, I think where we missed it, and we all missed it, is we stopped talking after 2018. I still think there's a lot of work to be done, so I'd challenge the council on 2 items. One is putting a group together that with the sole mission of trying to enhance affordable housing. And I think it's not only discussing metro, it's not only representatives of the city and the community talking about metro districts and how high you have to jump to get a metro district and what your controls in that metro district are. I think there's also room to go over things such as what role can manufactured housing play in solving our crisis? Very important one, in my opinion, now that we're building factories in Colorado for that. I think the second challenge I'd give is to come together on this issue, come up with a reasonable solution. We're working together again. And frankly, I think it'll be a lot easier to address a lot of other issues that have divided this council. So in a time of horrible national divisive politics, I'd love to see this council come together on this item and move forward on affordable housing again. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Marshall?
Jim Marshall.
Just hold on 1 second. Sorry about that.
Okay, my time's up.
Yep, have a seat.
Kevin's time's up.
There's a couple of people that'd probably be happy about that.
All right, go ahead.
Jim Marshall, 9591 East Hidden Hill Lane, Lone Tree, Colorado. I've been developing for approximately 30 years, over 15,000 units all across the Front Range. There's been a lot of negative press on districts recently. Specifically the Denver Post. The orchestrated attack is absolutely unjustified. There's been several misrepresentations and a lot of just outright lies. And people that believe what they read in the Denver Post these days, you might as well go pick up the National Enquirer because it's probably just about as accurate. As far as districts go, districts work, and I reiterate everything that Kevin said. I think you guys have done a great job with your affordable housing initiatives. But I hear 2 sides here. I hear you say we want affordability, but yet you want to take districts away, which is, and I know some of you don't agree with this, but districts do create affordability. The last several weeks, I've been amazed at how many experts have emerged on the topic of metro districts. There's not very many people that actually understand them. There's very few people in the city of Longmont that I believe even live in them. So it's a complicated topic. The service plan is the key. They do work, and I would encourage you to continue to move down the road of exploring how they can work in your town, because it's not, it's been mentioned many, many times. This is a tool in the toolbox. I'm here to tell you it's not just a tool in the toolbox. It is the toolbox. There's not one deal that I've looked at in the last 10 years that I would have done if I didn't have a metro district. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Lynette McLean?
Hi, Mayor Bagley and Kent City Council. My name is Lynette McLean, and I live on Sand Point Drive. I just wanted to say, first, I want to talk a little bit about constituents. And constituents, to me, are all your citizens, all the citizens in the city who you serve, not just people who voted for you, people who like you. It's everyone. And it's also people who didn't vote for you, that didn't vote for anybody. It's the people who don't have a voice, and that's a big population that we really need to always keep in mind. Those people who can't speak for themselves, or maybe because they have 2 or 3 jobs, maybe because they aren't interested, but also maybe just because they aren't able to be here. So I want you to listen to all your constituents, and you'll see tonight. And every night, anybody who talks about metro districts are developers. And I really want you to listen to your constituents, because that's why you were elected to do. If you ask any developer if he wants $31 more million to build his, to do his development, he's going to say yes. If I was a developer, I'd say yes. So yeah, that's a moot question to ask. Oh, if you had a metro district, would you be able to do your job better? Yes, I'm sure they would be able to. they're the only ones here who support metro districts, and they're the only ones that you'll find who support metro districts. They'll also tell you that they're very complicated, that people of simple intelligence like me can't really understand them. And I think that's really true. They are very complicated. They're too complicated for a city council to administer or service. They're too complicated for the staff. They need people who run metro districts need to be attorneys. They need to be trained, and we don't have that capability. They're just too complicated. And as long as they're run by developers, they're going to be serving developers. I'm really glad to hear that this the one person who from Golden, who had boards taken over by the residents, but I know that's really hard to do. We can and we will provide affordable housing without a metro district, and we can be palpable and have visible compassion. And I want to talk about affordability for who. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for public invited to be heard. All right. So let's move on to let's move on to special reports and presentations. First, let's start with the presentation on the 2020 presidential primary election and election security by Molly Fitzpatrick, the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I was up here for so long, you know. Perfect. Good evening, council members, and good evening, community members. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Molly Fitzpatrick, and I am the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder. And I also wanted to start by thanking you for all of the wonderful service and the work that you do for our community. And thank you to our community members for being so engaged. It takes all of us to ensure that our community can thrive, and I'm happy to be doing that work with you all. So, as you all know, 2020 is here. And we are seeing a lot of changes in the 2020 elections, and we also have a new election, which is the presidential primary election on March 3rd. And so given all these new changes and given the year that we have and the discourse and the national narrative, wanted to let you all know about these changes, since we know community members oftentimes look at you all as resources for any and all information. So wanted to start with an overview of the calendar. So as many of you know, we do have our presidential primary on March 3rd, and then we'll have our primary election for the statewide races and congressional races in June. And then of course we have our November election as well, the general election. So we haven't had a presidential primary in 20 years, and this is new for us. So in 2016, after the caucuses, voters initiated a presidential primary. And, we look at what's happening today and last night, and this is a really prime reason that we have presidential primaries in Colorado, because our elections office runs elections all of the time, and so this is a great service that we can provide for voters to nominate their choice for president. So when you get your ballots, and we do start mailing ballots next Monday, there is only going to be one contest on the ballot, and that's for the president. And the primaries are only held by the major political parties, so there will be a Democratic primary and then a Republican primary. This is still a new change for voters. Unaffiliated voters may now participate in primaries. And the important thing to note is that they may only participate in one primary. And this is something that we, again, voters initiated in 2016, and this was in effect in 2018. But given that it's still new and given that it is a presidential election year, we always want to remind unaffiliated voters that they can participate, but they can only vote on one party's ballot. Another new change is that 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the general election this year may participate in the primaries this year. And this also happens to be High School Voter Registration Awareness Week that our office initiated, and we're so proud that Boulder Valley School District and St. Vrain School District are formally partnering with us to ensure that high school students are aware of their options to participate in the presidential primary. So if you know a 17-year-old in your life, please let them know that they are able to participate. And if you live in a household with a 17-year-old, yes, they are supposed to receive that ballot if they will be 18 by November 3rd. And there are still party caucuses, and the caucuses are going to continue to establish local leadership, such as precinct captains, and then delegates to go on to the county and state assembly. Here is an overview of some key dates. The most important dates on there, February 10th. So next Monday, we will begin mailing ballots to voters. And so look for your ballot in the mail next week. And then our voter service and polling centers open on February 24th. And you can always go in and register and vote in person if you would like. There is no voter registration deadline in Colorado. And then March 3rd is the last day to vote and return that mail ballot by 7 p.m. So wanted to just take a quick step back to sort of put into context what our election model is, given that there's so much conversation going on nationally about elections and how we're structured. Here in Colorado, we are really known for having a very accessible and secure model. We have really we're an all-option state, so if you are registered to vote, you will automatically be sent a ballot in the mail. And then what you do with that ballot is your choice. You can mail it in, you can drop it off at a 24-hour drop box, or you can just go in person if that's what you wish to do. And then the other thing that makes our state unique is that we do not have a voter registration deadline. You can register up to and on election day. So here are the ballot return options once again. And wanted to highlight quickly security. So obviously security is a big topic of conversation nationally and also here in Colorado. And again, Colorado really is seen as a leader when it comes to cybersecurity and security efforts. Wanted to highlight just a couple of things that were really baked into our Colorado election model that we really overhauled in 2013. So some key features is that we have same-day voter registration. So if an individual's voter registration ever comes into question, they can always register to vote and cast a ballot that same day. We also have paper ballots. So every voter, again, gets a ballot in the mail that they can fill out and drop off. And if they choose to come vote in person, they will be voting on paper. All of our 24-hour drop boxes have security cameras, and all of our ballot processing operations where we actually, count the ballots are under camera 24/7, and also members of the public are welcome anytime. So if you'd like to see this work in action, we invite you to attend a ballot processing tour. All of the times and dates for those tours are going to be on our website. And then the other thing that makes Colorado really special is that we conduct a statewide risk limiting audit, and we're the first state that has conducted this audit, and we're the only state where it's fully operationalized, meaning every county in Colorado is doing this audit. And essentially what the audit does is compares the way that the scanner is reading your ballot to your actual physical ballot to ensure that it's accurate. And it's based on statistics, so we're auditing just enough ballots to confirm that the outcome is actually correct. And so with that, I know you all have a packed agenda. I'm happy to take questions. Also, here are some resources. I want to just highlight one of them, which is Ballot Track. So Ballot Track is a service that our office provides to voters to let them know that we have printed their ballot, that it's in the mail, that we've received it, that it's been counted. And so it really does give voters a high degree of confidence that, where their ballot is in the life cycle of it being processed. So thank you all so much for the work that you do, and thank you everyone for being here. And I'm, again, happy to take questions, or you can get in touch with us through these channels. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for coming. Longmont is always welcome and open to county officials, so thank you. All right, now we are going to postpone this week's conversation on the presentation of the Performing Arts Feasibility Study. I'm just kidding. It was a joke. Just kidding.
Scared.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the feasibility study.
Shorty, I have to do this. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and council members. Can you hear me back there? I am Kim Anajay. I'm the director at the Longmont Museum, and I am also the city liaison on the steering committee for the feasibility study for the Performing Arts Center. Tonight, I'm here really to just introduce the speakers that will be presenting to you tonight. Ryan and Charlie Johnson are here from Johnson Consulting. They have a slide presentation that they're going to provide for you, but they're going to really just hit the highlights. So they will just go quickly through that slide presentation and then be able to answer some questions for you. So Charlie and Ryan Johnson.
evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Charlie Johnson, 6 East Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois. Today we're going to present our information related to Phase 1 of our feasibility analysis and strategic planning for a potential performing arts center, a performing arts center, an event center, conference center, as well as a potential hotel. So we are finished with Phase 1 work, and we're going to just give you an interim report today, and we will keep it sharp because this was already in your packet. I know you have a lot to do today. All right, on our team, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that'll help. Great. All right, so on our team is our firm, Johnson Consulting. We also have MIG, which has a very major presence in Denver, who's doing kind of the site work analysis for us. And then we also have an architectural firm called DLR. They are not doing any design work. They're just doing test fits and concepting and giving us ranges of what cost will be. So we're all participating, and the client group has met with all of our team. So the market study, these questions were summarized in the request for proposal. Then we've also reviewed them with LaPi and the client group Stakeholder. So we are focused on these questions, and our intent is to address all of them. We'll do that obviously comprehensively. We will provide summarization of that today. Next slide. This summarizes our no notes. We're substantially complete with our market and market analysis and strategy. We haven't done site work, but the market, field work, understanding the case studies in the regional market and how it operates. I think we have a very good grounding on that. And then we've also spent a tremendous amount of time with stakeholders, so understanding their perspectives and their desired outcomes for the project. Also been talking to city management and trying to integrate their ideas for the community so we can integrate that into our findings as well. Phase 2, this is really kind of the business planning for the project. We haven't really started this yet. So this is kind of an interim step where we're going to catch our breath, let everybody review all the material, and then we'll engage in the second phase of the work. The real work here is a business plan. And we will be doing site assessments as well as the cost estimates, but we will be addressing all of these topics in our work. And it's what our firm does throughout the country. Ryan, I'm going to talk about this one slide, then I'll turn it back over to you. First of all, we looked at the economic and demographic characteristics of the market. It's a lovely market. It's growing nicely. You have a really good positioning on the front range. And the fact that that is growing really provides an opportunity to allow you all to serve your citizens better, but also turn the tide a little bit to, instead of people leaving Longmont to go to see arts and entertainment groups, you'll be bringing people in. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, when we look at the nature of your population, the education levels and income levels are just fit like a glove with the arts culture. And that's indicated by the presence of LaPi, which is an outstanding organization, and then all the other types of arts activities that we've been involved and exposed to while we've been here. So I think the bottom line is there's a high affinity for participation in arts, and people really do have a high incidence of participation, which is now what Ryan will talk about.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. What I am going to walk you through is some of the stakeholder community engagement that was conducted for the project. We met with over 50 had over 50 small group meetings and one-on-one meetings with some of the organizations presented here. We also conducted 2 surveys, one that was focused on the arts component of the project, and that received over 1,000 responses, and then also a Another survey on the event center component that was directed towards meeting planners that are active here in Longmont in the community and also throughout the region. And some of the takeaways that we got from these stakeholder and community meetings, really focusing on the Arts Center first. There really is no capacity in the market right now. The schools are used by the schools, and they don't have the technological or capacities to support some of the programming opportunities. Also, LaPi, that right there, 6 organizations that could serve in some form or role as potentially an anchor tenants for a project. And then again, booking congestion at the existing facilities in the area are very challenging. And then our survey really indicated the majority of people participate in events, but they leave the market to do that. So by providing something here and into the future, you'd really help do a number of things to improve the quality of life. And also these types of facilities are really important in corporate recruitment. People that want to come work in this type of community want things to do. So there's a lot of opportunity for the Arts Center. And then also you all have in the planning stages a comprehensive plan for Longmont Arts and Culture, which our report can feed into, and that'll help serve as a future roadmap. Focusing on the event center, right now Visit Longmont really can't pursue any RFPs. There's really no request for proposals for events that want to come to the marketplace. There's really nothing to sell. You have very limited meeting space at your hotels. People want to come here and have their events here that are here, but really nowhere to do it. Then also, this recaps some of the different space types that the event planners are interested in. Then again, here is a recap of the 2 different surveys that were conducted. I don't want to go point by point through all the next slides, but this was included in the packet. It's available for download for people that want to read some of the key findings from the surveys. But we separated again the Arts Center survey and then also the Event Center survey. And all very positive and all very interested in the market. So we think the market opportunity from a booking and user perspective is very positive. Then also there's some infrastructure attributes that reinforce this thinking as well. So one of the questions you all asked, what is the arts venue inventory in this marketplace? So really 57 relevant art venues within 35 miles. And if you look at the band of 500 seats to about 2,000 seats, most of those are either affiliated with a school, college, or university, or also could be a church or place of worship. So they're really not available for use. And when they are, it's really at a constrained amount of time and not conducive for the arts organizations or other entertainment activities. So this looks complicated, but it's really not. What we've done here is plot all of the event facilities focusing on conference and meetings in the marketplace. So the largest event space by contiguous space. So if you think of the fairgrounds, the Boulder County Fairgrounds, their expo hall is just under 40,000 square feet, and they don't really have any other meeting space. So that's plotted at the top right of the chart. So this next slide reduces out. We have basically taken out all the facilities with 10,000 square feet or less space, and then rank the facilities by class type. So Class A facilities would be like conference spaces, ballroom type spaces. Class B would be kind of in between the fairgrounds and like a real nice conference center. And so as you plot these facilities, you're able to see an area of opportunity that emerges that's not being served currently in the market. And then one of the other questions that was asked of us, well, what about the existing facilities in the marketplace and how are they being used? So you really Primary ones are the fairgrounds, the D-Barn Reception Hall, Vance Brand, the former Plaza Convention Center, and then Stewart Auditorium at the Longmont Museum. And again, some of the common limitations are insufficient capacity, food and beverage limitations, booking congestions, other primary users, configuration challenges, and also infrastructure limitations like back of house, orchestra pit, dressing room, green rooms, etc.
Pick back up. We also are analyzing a hotel. We have looked at the market, and at this juncture, the preponderance of hotels are what we would characterize as limited service, where they don't have a lot of restaurants and ballroom space and meeting space. The typical property would be 100 to 120 rooms and maybe a 1,000 square foot meeting space. That is just not going to be allowing, that just restricts you from being able to serve businesses that are here. When we talk to Seagate, they say we'll be an anchor tenant if you get us something into a venue like that. So I'm not going to hold them to that, but that's the level of interest that we had experienced when we discussed that. The average daily rate and the occupancy in this market are struggling, so diversification of demand is helpful. Obviously, as the market grows and businesses come in, that'll raise the marketplace. But at this juncture, you can't afford what we would characterize a a full-service hotel like a Marriott or a Hyatt until it matures a little bit more and there's some more demand generators that come into the market. The capital budget for that hotel would be, it's about $325,000 a room, and then that requires a room rate that's higher than it's being achieved in the marketplace. So it's certainly something that belongs in the equation, and we will be giving you a strategy and a community plan to help you visualize how to execute hotel if this project moves forward. We also are preparing a variety of case studies. We're looking at some national ones, Federal Way, Bellevue, and Durham. Some of these are integrated conference centers and performing arts centers. Others are exclusively hotel conference centers. And then we've looked at performing arts centers. And we're developing operational data, demand data. And in the next slide, kind of looks at the attributes that we're evaluating for each of these case studies, and it'll serve as a wonderful resource to the overall environment here, that they can understand what the reality is on operating buildings, demand, size, revenues, expenses, et cetera, and how also they've dealt with the scheduling conflicts that happen in these types of venues, because people want to have rehearsal dates, and they also need to be able to do their productions. So there's conflicts that's happening, and I think that's revealed. This summarizes first the attributes of all those points that I had on the prior slide of all the case study cities. And the darker the numbers are, the more positive they are. So right now that tells you that the population at the immediate area of 30 miles is smaller than a lot of the case studies, but you're growing faster than many of these communities. And I think that you're going to grow into the market. So I think one of the most important things we think about is future proofing. So when we build something today, what's it going to look like tomorrow after some dynamics have happened in the marketplace? So we're trying to be respectful of that dynamic. But big picture, you all have an outstanding setting, and you compete fairly well, especially when you get to the 60-minute drive time. You're right in the cohorts of the best upper quartile performance. As we start presenting our demand projections, we really looked at all the activity that's being booked by the LaPi, and you can see almost every weekend during the fall, et cetera, the darker the color, it illustrates there's conflict happening, so there's multiple events happening on those same dates. That's exactly what happens. Layer on top of that the fact that many of the larger venues are used for high schools, et cetera. You really are struggling with to get a date availability. And this is an outstanding baseline to start with when you have a facility like that. And given the organizational structure, and I think the intellectual thought that's gone into LaPi is absolutely a market leader in that area. So organizationally, I think you've got a good starting point. You got a head of steam to start with. This illustrates the top venues in the country. It really, in the size capacities that we've kind of identified as the range. And this tells you the volume of tickets sold. So that number, when we do our business planning, comes back into play. I think the most important thing from this slide is in Boulder, it ranks 16th. So it's of all the ticketed venues for performing arts centers in this size category, you're already penetrating, serving this area, and I think it provides an opportunity. That's the university's venue, and it is absolutely unavailable in large measure for outside uses. So that's a real opportunity here, actually, to take advantage of the fact that this is full. So I think you'll be able to double duty in terms of serving markets. This helps size the venue. We really looked at various sizes, and there's pros and cons to each size, but I think it's really important to help you understand what the range, when we got to the all green column, demand, LaPi, et cetera, that's really helped us size the range. And we would kind of encourage analyzing towards the upper end of the range just to future-proof you, because we really think you're going to be growing a lot. So this kind of gives us our direction of what we'll start modeling in our next phase of work. Same thing, same philosophy for the conference center element. We want to make sure that the conference center matches the attendance at the conference center, has the capacity to match the attendance at the Performing Arts Center, because they could be used jointly. You could have let's appeal to the millennials. We could have an esports venue happening, and they could do a food function and have an entertainment venue. Arts venues, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to be able to have the capability to be able to eat and then entertain at the same time, so the capacities have to match. And that's what we've arrived at here. We also think it's appropriate for the market and the dynamics that are happening. We will caution you that expansion of these types of venues is possible, so you have a future proof, you don't have that capability with Performing Arts Centers. So that's something to be aware of as we do our planning on this. Strategically, we're recommending, we would be advancing these into our next phase of work. We'd like to see we're going to be testing a co-located facility, because there's a lot of synergies that can be gained by adjacencies of a hotel, conference center, performing arts center. You really make a project that has some stature to it, and also matches what audiences are looking for. So these are the size categories that we'll be testing. We do indicate a desire and a need for having a black box, probably about 300. It could be basically, it's a specialized ballroom space that would have the same stage size as the main stage, where the rehearsals can happen and they can really routinize their performances that'll mimic on the stage. So that's something that's actually used quite a bit. Parker has one, for example, and it's a common element, and it could be phased in or it could be provided immediately depending on the capital availability. We also, the conference center element, 25,000 square feet. We also need to have breakout space, so a small meeting room, junior ballroom component with that. And then all the principles of good operations need to be reflected in here so we can keep the life cycle costs for the facility within capability to manage them optimally. So this just is a little information on our firm, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions you all may have.
Nope.
I do have
All
one.
right, Councilmember Peck?
This is probably for staff. I cannot picture 25,000 to 35,000 square feet. Do we have a building in town that is similar to that?
Half the expo hall at the Boulder Fairgrounds. That's
Oh,
50,000 square feet. 55. So,
Okay, great.
but the amenitization and the appearance, that's a solid, good Class B facility, and it plays a role for consumer shows. This is more for business, things of that nature, but that gives you a sense. So the aesthetics would be completely different.
Of course.
But that's the size. And it seats, that'll seat about 3,000 people for a theater type of activity, sitting in seats, watching a presentation on stage, but it could also be broken down. It can do consumer shows and a variety of festivals and things of that nature. So it could be a real attractive amenity to it. What we like to say is the airport is the welcome mat, and the convention center is the community's living room. And that's a great way to kind of visualize this. This is where you want people to socialize and enjoy themselves as long as they're, as well as visiting all the amenities, other activities in the region.
Okay, and with the Parker Event Center, did you talk to them about how often they keep events there? Is there are they full? Is it working?
Well,
is it making?
they have taken. We know that they incur a large deficit. They have taken a very strong, talented person from the Denver Performing Arts Group, that's the manager, and they have taken a model that is higher risk, where they're putting on their own stage performances. So they actually locally create those and bring, rather than use a touring show. So that's a lot more management, a lot more risk, and it takes a lot of work. So that does incur a fairly large operating deficit. And I don't know if they put other social services. I don't know how the accounting is for the chart of accounts. So it may be loaded in with some other departmental charges, et cetera. I think overall they've been very happy with the level of business and the attendance. It is not as high as you've seen in the other ones, and it's a smaller venue. But I think it's been an amenity that's been very well received socially.
And how large is their event center? Is it in the 25,000 square feet group? Or?
They don't have an event center per se.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
performing arts center.
Just performing arts.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. And they do have an art gallery that's integrated to it. It's about 5,000 square feet. So it's a lovely setting. They
Okay.
took the train and took the thematics of the historical train activity and made it into the aesthetics of the building. So it really communicates what Parker is.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Waters?
On the full-service hotel question or context, right, and population and room rates, in your work, was there any investigation of what post-secondary institutions in Colorado have hospitality programs?
I haven't put that together, but that's a good question. And we've seen some like Cornell, obviously, is the famous one where they actually own and operate a hotel.
I know I visited the Marriott facility on the campus at Metro State, which is a teaching institution, but it's also a full-service hotel. It's in Denver, so obviously their population's different. But just a walk around was fascinating in terms of what you saw from room to room. Students delivering services, all part of their instructional program, but high-end program. And I just wonder whether or not, we're in conversations with institutions. You're aware of that building STEAM project that we had going.
Oh, absolutely.
Conversations with post-secondary institutions about what their levels of interest might be. just curious whether or not any of those either have hospitality programs, or if we knew who did, had more information, who might be interested in what we're doing here, and whether or not that institution and that program would come together with, what our vision is for that piece of property or that part of the city, and whether or not that would change the equation on the potential for a full-service hotel. The economics would be very different than just a standalone operation, and would be very conducive to the kind of programming that you'd want to see in a conference center and with a performing arts center, just saying. So if you've
It's
got
not-
that
it's-
bandwidth, it would be an interesting question.
It's not a crazy idea. Ryan and I are working in Trinidad now, where there's a brand-new performing arts center there. They put their whole performing arts training school as part of that.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few. That's what we call creative and accretive, and that's where we get to as we start doing our workshops with our architectural community.
Did I know, does Front Range have a hospitality program?
I am a hospitality person. I think DU is probably the most.
I know they do, and
Yeah.
they have a first-rate program.
Yeah, I'm
But
certain that-
anyway, if
We'll take that under
thank you.
advisement.
Councilmember Christensen?
Okay. I do I think Councilman Waters has a very good idea. If we are working with trying to get some synergy between CU and Front Range Community Colleges and some other things. And CU already has a museum and people who are involved in learning how to run museums and art galleries and things like that. And hotel management would also fit in very well with the business schools
Fits
and
like
things
a
like
glove.
that. But my question was, I was a little confused about whether, as part of this, you were thinking there will be an on-site hotel, or whether people will be commuting to this.
Our hope is we'll be able to find a site that allows the kind of a campus to evolve, where we could have that facility, maybe some other amenitization, maybe some retail. So we'd like to
Yeah.
see something happen where has some vitality to it,
Yeah.
rather than being
Right.
placed in a place where that can't exist.
Yeah, I was a little worried about what the effect might be with cannibalization on the business, the hotels that we already have and things like that. Because of course the idea is to
Goals to
make our
lift.
businesses healthier rather than bring in new businesses that'll destroy some of the old ones. But okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your work. I'm looking forward to seeing how much this costs. So I look forward to phase 2, because right
How
now,
big a check you
we,
need to
we,
write?
we, you said we all want a Ferrari, and and we can't afford the biggest engine, but it's still a pretty big one.
Exactly.
And I'd like to see the costs. So I'm looking forward to the next presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a 4-minute break, 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to the Metro District discussion and the meat of our meeting. So. not sneaky, Macy. We know. Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and continue with our agenda. So let's go ahead and move on to study session item number 5A, Metro District Ordinance Revisions. Hold on, Mike. Oh, there we go. Oh, getting some feedback. All right. So let's go ahead and the process for tonight. We're going to go ahead and follow the good old tried and true method of if there's make a motion, it needs to be seconded, and then we'll have debate. Everybody gets the opportunity to speak twice, maximum of 10 minutes, and you have to wait till everybody goes through the queue before you have your second turn, and we'll just do that until we go home. So, and if you want to be recognized, raise your hand. Councilmember Christensen.
I move that we restore, what is this now? Well, there's a big hole here where it should say what this is. The ordinance that we had prior to our change in it last February. And as I say, the hole is punched out of it, so I would move that we restore the ordinance that we had, whatever number that is. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, and so just to reiterate, the motion is not to pass the ordinance that's in our packet. The motion is to restore the ordinance as it was prior to the previous council's vote, which allowed for metro districts?
Yeah, no. This is the motion that was that's in our packet, and this is the ordinance that existed.
All right. So what
and it allowed residential. Did not allow residential districts, except in the case of a mixed-use residential district.
So
which is on
is this the exact ordinance that was in the city ordinances before? Oh, can we get the mic, a hot mic on Eugene May?
Mayor and Council?
Yep.
Eugene May, City Attorney. So yes, the ordinance in the packet is the one before this council amended it to take out the residential prohibition.
Okay, so it's exactly as written prior?
Yeah.
Okay, then the motion's the same. So cool. Any discussion?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and start with Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like to offer an amendment. I think that that a lot of things need to be discussed about this ordinance. There are some outright falsehoods in it in terms of the justification for it, and I think that it sets the limits on what counts as what kind of mixed use of a metro district must contain in the wrong place. So I won't vote for this unamended, but what I would like to do is instead move that we, or I guess, yeah, my friendly amendment is a replacement. I think we should discuss alterations to this, because many of the restrictions that it puts on metro districts are the right ones. It's just too restrictive in terms of the kind of districts that it allows.
All right. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm going to support it because for two reasons. First of all, when we okayed the first metro district, Mayor Bagley made the suggestion that we do this first one and see how it turns out. So I think that's a good idea. And we can always bring this back if this first metro district turns out to work the way we say, and we can actually look at the service plan and make sure it works, that we know what we're doing, and that we hold the district accountable. Then we can always bring back the ordinance and say, yep, this works for our city. The other reason is that I think that there is some misinformation about special districts. If we want a special district for preschools, if we want a special district for library districts, that can be a totally separate ordinance that we can put in place and have that voted on. So this would not actually get rid of any special district like library, preschool, or any other special district that we want in our city.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Christensen.
You've forgotten my name
No,
already.
no, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to keep track
know.
of who's talked and who's going in order.
I know.
So,
This is a little different for all
I'm in the
of us.
dark ages here.
This ordinance, it is not now, nor has it ever been against the law to have special districts or metro districts in the city. It was only against the law to have residential special districts. We already have the regional transportation district. If you look up on the city finance page, you can see what we pay in sales tax and exactly what special districts we have. We have two. We have the Science and Cultural Facilities District, and we have the Regional Transportation District. We could easily add a early childhood education district. There's nothing in this that would prevent any of that. The only thing in here that would be different would be that we would not allow residential special districts unless they are mixed use, and that would be with the approval of the city. And this was our policy from 2004 until 2018, and I don't, this is very carefully reviewed by numerous lawyers, so that's what the amendment would be.
All right, great, thank you. Councilmember Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. It was interesting to me as I went through this amendment, when we dealt with this back in February, we'd made the decision simply to repeal this ordinance. We didn't go through this ordinance. I wish at that time we had, but we were like, there was housing policy fatigue, as I recall. It was like, oh, geez, one more thing. Because there's a lot of good, there's a lot to agree with in this ordinance. There are also some things that for me would be non-starters in this ordinance. But before I get to those, it would be helpful to me to understand, just big picture, why there was a prohibition, why this ordinance included a prohibition against the use of special districts for residential development. Can somebody inform me, enlighten me, why the city passed an ordinance to create a prohibition?
It's all in here.
Let us turn to the archives. The city historian, Jim Golden. Tell us a story.
Mayor, Council, Jim Golden, Chief Financial Officer. Sorry if I don't
You
have
got
a
it, huh?
strong voice here, or a good memory, but no, actually. So it ties back to the Clover Basin Metro District. That was Fire district that was put into place in the mid-90s for our ability to put a fire station in place to service the southwest area as it developed in Longmont. There was a lot of opposition to that, and eventually in 2008, it was repealed by the city council at that point in time. I think the council that was dealing with the special district ordinance in 2004 at that point were not interested in having metro districts with residential, and they were really looking for mixed-use development and trying to incent mixed-use development at that time.
I want to get to the mixed-use development. That's one of the things in here that makes the 50% number makes no sense to me in terms of mixed-use developments makes sense, but the constraint at 50% in a mixed-use development makes no sense. But I'll come back to that. What was it that caused the council in 2004 or 2007? Was it 2004 or 7 when the council, it was 2007, I think, when they passed the prohibition, right?
In 2004 is when that ordinance was passed.
2004, okay.
For the special districts. And
what provoked that? What became controversial? Because I see a reference in here to controversy.
So, Councilmember Waters, to the best of my knowledge, what I recall is the reason why we adopted a special district ordinance is because we were trying to develop the Harvest Junction district, and it was a commercial district. And so, at that point in time, only the state statutes was addressing how special districts would be used in the city. And so the city council wanted to address the use of special districts in the city with an intention to put
For mixed use.
to put the Harvest Junction commercial district in place. And at that point, there was discussion of should this be allowed for anything, for residential, and there was opposition to that residential. They were only willing to allow it in a mixed-use development.
But I want to drill down on what happened in Clover Basin that caused the council to create a prohibition against the use of special districts for residential development. It was okay in 1997, or was it 97? It was approved in 94, began to collect taxes in 97, is that right?
That's correct.
In 2004, it wasn't okay. What happened in those 7 years? Why did it become controversial?
Because the homeowners began to have to pay that special district tax and realized that they were paying a different tax rate for their services that they were receiving in that area compared to the rest of the city.
Well, here's what my understanding is. So you just correct me with this, that there were some residents in the fire district who were paying the tax while others were not, who were living in the fire district. So I'm paying, my neighbor across the street or around the corner isn't paying.
So, Mayor Bagley, members of council, so let me explain that. Within the district itself, the actual special district, they were all paying the tax. There were areas that were being served by the fire station that was built that did not fall within that district because they pre-existed before the district was created. And so I think that's what you're referring to.
So the fire district was serving residents outside the fire district?
That's correct.
Okay. But everybody inside the special district was paying the tax?
That's correct. As it was designed, and when it was created by the developers, it was to tax those individuals within those homes being built within that area to offset the costs of building and operating Fire Station number 5.
So the controversy was somebody not in the fire district getting service and not paying whatever that mill levy was. That was the basis for creating the prohibition.
That was the controversy.
All right.
Those same members outside the district were already receiving coverage from other fire stations before fire station was built.
Got it. All
So
right.
they weren't receiving anything different, only it was coming from a different station.
So was that an abuse of the fire district?
Excuse me?
Was that an abuse of the fire district? Wasn't an abuse of the fire district. Was it a flaw in the fire district in the way that whole district was created?
Subject of opinion, I guess.
Well, somebody must have thought there was a problem.
But the fire district was created specifically so that the Clover Basin development could build out. It's the reason why it was required.
I get it. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not, Jim.
So
I'm just trying to understand. There's a specific reference in here to a controversy with no specifics. So I just would like to know more about the controversy in it and whether or not the problem was an ill-conceived special district for residential development, or whether the problem was it was implemented in a way that created a controversy. Not the problem of the district, the problem of implementation. That's what I'm trying to get at,
So
to understand.
Let me try.
And that's, you're the historian. I apologize. I'm not trying to put you on the
So I'm going to try to also jump in based on some of the history that I've received on this. So part of what happened is, and Joni, you can help me if you remember any of this.
Joni's like, no.
The reality is we weren't here and Joni wasn't in the position, but when developments come in, they go through an analysis in terms of what you can do in terms of fire protection. And I think the one that came in basically on that analysis said we don't have the ability to provide fire protection under our current structure we need a new fire station in order for that development to come in. I think the solution then was for the Metro District within the boundaries to then construct the fire station, or was it the operations of the fire station?
It was both. But what happened is the council had response time requirements in place for
Yeah.
the fire station. And so in order to meet that response time, they
Had to
couldn't
build the
do it
station.
any further outside the reach of the existing stations.
Well, I get all that. But
So that was the mitigation that they
from
required.
the time it was conceptualized and approved to in 97 to 2004, something changed. And what changed is residents got grumpy and brought it to the council, as I recall, or as I understand, because some were paying for service and some weren't. And I'm just trying to understand how did that happen? And is that the problem of the district, because there's a reference in the ordinance about the district creating controversy, or was it the way the district was implemented, which isn't the fault of the district? It would be how it was implemented. That's all I'm trying to get an understanding of. Because there's a reference here that we ought to have a footnote, if we have the language in here to define what the controversy was or specify. Now, I'll yield. I have a bunch of other stuff, but that's just understanding where, what that issue is. But I'm going to be left with the understanding that some people were paying, some people weren't, and it wasn't the fault of the district that was the case.
All right.
I don't know if that was a question.
Jim's like, yes.
That
okay.
wasn't a question. That last was a statement.
All right, great. All right, Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. It feels really strange not to push a button before I start talking.
Oh, you're going to push buttons, Marcia. I know you will.
I know. We're leaving the room here, the people I was going to talk to.
I'm trying to give question answers.
Well, you can answer it, but let's all hear it.
I'm trying to understand what was where, so.
So there's a lot of development out there in the Clover Basin area. And there's language in that Clover Basin service plan that says it's anticipated that other developments as they occur will join into the district. Is it true that there were absolutely no additional developments or annexations that were served by Fire Station Number 4 after the creation of after Fire Station Number 5 was built and the original Metro District came into existence?
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I don't know the answer to that question, if there was any
It seems
subsequently
essential
built.
that we do know that.
So the question is, were there additional developments that were built subsequent to the formation of the Metro District that were not included in the Metro District, and they received service by that fire station? In other words, was the Clover Basin development, they footed the bill, and then subsequent developments didn't foot the bill, or were all the people being served by the fire station previous developments to the Metro District, but for Clover Basin? Is that the right question?
That's the question,
Okay.
yes.
It's a good question.
Why did no other
you do it?
developments join
Go for
that?
it. We've got two of us jumping in.
Special
Go.
Mayor
district.
Bagley and Councilmember Martin. So my recollection as a planner who processed applications starting in 2001 and certainly in the Clover Basin neighborhood is I don't recall ever annexing or requesting as part of an annexation or a final plat asking someone to annex into the Clover Basin Fire District. Frequently we did have exclusions from the Hygiene Fire District as well as the Mountain View Fire District that are associated with annexation, but I personally don't recall adding anything into that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I don't recall a process for that.
Well, that's exactly my question, Ms. Marsh, is that it seems to me that if they were served by that fire station, they should have been asked to annex into the district and share the cost of paying for the fire station and the services. So that's why what I'm asking is, were there new developments served by that fire station that
were not asked to join the Metro District because the service plan suggests that they should have been before permits were issued.
And I think what we've heard is that there were new developments that were built, that were served by that fire station, that were not brought into the fire district.
Okay, so then that means that the fire district itself was not necessarily controversial. What was controversial was the way it was administered to give other new development a free ride.
Councilmember Christensen.
Well, if other places had joined in that, that would have been a material change in the special district, and they would have had to, council would have had to re-examine that, it seems to me. If you look at this, it states quite clearly why this was put forth, and while it is useful to talk about Clover Basin, we have been talking about Clover Basin for about 2 years now. It's also just, in general, a good idea to examine policy, since that's what we're supposed to be doing. And this is a policy document and a legal document, and it says quite clearly 4 through 7, preserve the financial integrity of the city and its citizens, prevent the shift of development risk to non-developers, minimize and insulate the city from risks, meaning lawsuits and controversies that may arise in relation to special districts, minimize excessive tax burdens upon city residents in city districts. Also, all existing Longmont residential development was funded without districts, so the lack of these districts will not adversely affect Longmont residential development. Creation of a residential district creates a differential property tax structure among similar resident developments, and the district residents would pay significantly more property tax without any commensurate public benefit. The higher mill levy in districts projects may make these residents less inclined to support other city property tax increases, and buyers in homes of tax projects are often unaware of the higher property taxes in their development and may become upset when property taxes increase. Residents may be surprised to find out the price of their home did not include the price of streets and utilities in their development, and then they must pay for this over a 30 or more year period through their property taxes. So I do think that this, we basically went through and crossed out 4 pages of city law, and I would like to just uncross out those 4 pages and restore it. I think this is a very sensible document. There are plenty of developers who are currently building developments all over town. Nice developments and varied developments, varied price points, and now they're all also building affordable housing. So I don't see a need for this. It's complex, and it takes up city staff time, it takes up our time, and it isn't really of any benefit to the citizens of this town. There are good tools and there are bad tools. As I have said before, people put forth the subprime mortgages as a critical tool for affordable housing, and while partly well-meaning, that has turned into quite the disaster along with credit default swaps. So those were not good tools, and I don't believe that residential special and metro districts are very often a good tool. I think they can be, but I think they rarely are, and I don't think that Longmont needs them.
All right, so Marcia, I see you've already spoken twice. So Polly, or Councilmember Christensen and Councilmember Martin, you've already spoken twice on this motion. If there are subsequent motions, we'll let you chime in.
I'm going to get way back in, but I'll
way back in. I guess my only thought is, I've not said a lot. Actually, I've said nothing on this particular issue over the last couple weeks. But I have read Councilmember Christensen. I left you a message today saying that I thought your editorial today was well written and lots of good points. Councilmember Martin, I thought you had a part one, part two piece in the Longmont Observer that I thought was, again, very, very well researched and very well thought out. Councilmember Waters, I've heard your comments for the last few months and have found them to be very insightful, very deep, and very, I find everybody's comments correct. My question on this is, I guess I'm not understanding why is it okay to have commercial. I mean, all the fears and all the bad things that were written about in the Denver Post articles, all the things that I hear brought up that make metro districts and special districts as well so bad and scary, the same arguments apply to residential, commercial, and mixed use. There's nothing special about a mixed use development that all of a sudden eliminates, I don't see how it would eliminate the risks. I think the risks are if we put Dr. Waters in charge of preparing and drafting the Metro District, if the city wants to hire him, I think that we would be, he thinks about it a lot. Whereas I think that if others, such as whoever created the Clover Basin Fire District, that was something happened there that led to inequity and unfairness. And so if it's done properly, I think this is a great tool. If it's not done properly, I think that it could be a disaster. And so I guess my only question in this is, as we restore it, I guess my question is, why are we restoring it and not saying that we shouldn't have any metro or special districts at all? Because I'll vote for it, but on the next round of amendments and discussions, that's what I'm going to want. That's my question. So, my computer just went off. Oh, now it's back. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I do have a question for our city attorney. Under 11C on the document that you gave us, it says the district shall not exercise any power of eminent domain without the prior written consent of the city council. Do we have the right to do that? Do we have the right to limit the power of eminent domain from a district?
Mayor and council, fortunately with us tonight is Special Counsel Carolyn White, and if I may, I'm going to defer to her to answer this question.
Thank you.
Mayor, council member, Carolyn White, your special counsel on development and redevelopment issues. To answer your question, I would say you have the legal authority to limit the use of eminent domain in the service plan or in the intergovernmental agreement with any new district that you approve. The question of what that impact might be is a different question.
Yeah.
But legally, do you have the authority to do it? Yes, I believe you do.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is that from the research that I've done, some of the lawsuits that have been brought against the city are because of the limits on eminent domain that cities have put on districts. So to me, that was a sketchy area. That what are the limits, and at what point during the development are those limits excessive? And so that's just a very gray area for me when I looked at it. But I do want to answer when Mayor Bagley, you had said you don't know something about why we are limiting the special districts. We are not, from my perspective, as I said earlier, we are not limiting the possibility of special districts within our city. They can be under a new ordinance. For example, the library district, the early childhood preschool district, and the commercial districts. For me, the board is what the difference is. All of those commercial properties, they have owners of those properties that usually are on the board. So it is the difference between who is on the board of the special district, just from my perspective. Whereas residents aren't usually on the boards because they don't understand them and they don't apply. So, and I'm going to go back to the cities that I have talked to the city council people. 4 out of 6 of them have said they wish they had never done it. And until the statutes on the state are changed and there's some regulatory authority, I just won't vote. I will vote in favor of the motion.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I think this or Councilmember Peck's comments and questions segue a little bit to my concerns. I think it's been clear ever since we began this conversation last year that I've been worried about what is allowed as far as oversight and regulation and enforcement from a municipal level, considering a metropolitan special district is a quasi-governmental entity. And that is decided by the state statute, which I believe is the Special District Act. As such, in this ordinance that was provided in our packet at 4.10.140, the failure to comply with policies and procedures, they all seem somewhat vague in the sense that it says exercise any applicable remedy, exercise any legal remedy, exercise any other legal remedy, in each section here, but it doesn't specify what legal remedy would be. And to me, it insinuates that this exercising of remedy would be pretty much purely litigious in nature. Would you say that that's generally speaking the legal remedy that would have to be taken if there's a failure to comply with an intergovernmental agreement or the agreement made through the service plan?
Mayor, council member, again, Carolyn White. One point of clarification I just would like to mention is technically these districts are not quasi-governmental. They are governmental. Yes. They're quasi-municipal, okay, meaning that they don't have the full complement of police powers that a municipality does. They only have the specific limited powers granted to them in the statute and their service plan. So they're quasi-municipal, but they are fully governmental. And that sort of also goes to the answer of your question, which is what are your remedies? There are some remedies in the statute. I don't think anyone's mentioned here or discussed the quinquennial review, which is one option that a city has when it believes that a district is not complying with certain specific requirements in the service plan. Also, through the intergovernmental agreement, you can negotiate and the district can agree to other types of remedies besides litigation if you so choose to and so desire. But the other response I would make to both your question and the earlier question is that it is legal for you to impose a whole variety of constraints on new metro districts when you approve their formation. However, there does come a point at which it may be inadvisable to do so, only because at some point you are so constraining the entity that it no longer can truly be considered an independent governmental entity, at which point it may not satisfy the requirements for the Internal Revenue Service to issue tax-exempt municipal debt, at which point the whole benefit of having a district is essentially dissipated. And so that's a fine line, and I'm not an expert on IRS regulations, but some of those things are some of the fundamental governmental powers are the power to tax, the power to issue debt, and the power to use eminent domain. So if you impose a great deal of constraints on all three of those powers, there is some risk that a district may be found not to be a truly independent governmental entity once it has been created, and may be risked down the road that the bonds would be held to be taxable, not tax exempt.
So in concept, that would render the financing mechanism somewhat moot in the sense that they are not the governmental entity and do not qualify for the tax-free bonds or bonding authority for tax-free bonds, and therefore, as you said, that the bonds could be taxed, which again, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of the Metro District in and of itself?
I mean, the principal benefit of using a metro district to finance infrastructure is that a metro district, like a city or a county, can take advantage of a lower interest rate associated with tax-free municipal bonds. So yes, if it was found not to be a true governmental entity, and the bonds were held by the IRS to be taxable, not tax exempt, it would eliminate one of the primary benefits of using a metro district.
Thank you. And so again, this harkens back to my point about the oversight and regulation by the municipal government being Longmont over the quasi-municipal government being, say, Mountain Brook or any other future quasi-municipal government.
That's right.
Mountain Brook or any future metropolitan district. And I've had that concern from day one as far as how this is all set up statutorily, because I reviewed the proposed regulations by council members Martin and Waters, and a lot of them made a lot of sense, but would drastically impose on the ability for a metro district to act as a governmental entity as far as being able to issue the kind of bonds that we were just speaking about. I was fully prepared to come in here and offer amendments on ways that I thought that we could allow for exceptional benefits to be worked into this, such as, you know, meeting a threshold for the middle tier housing options that we talk about so often in our missing housing stock, or in above and beyond percentage of affordable housing, the capital A affordable housing being provided in the district. But without the legal remedies or legal ability that I feel would be necessary to regulate and have oversight and enforcement of a metropolitan district, I don't think I can support them based on the fact that I would want to regulate them too harshly for them to really exist in any sort of efficacy. And so that's why I seconded the motion of Councilmember Christensen. Thank you.
All right, so I guess one more thing that I want to point out, that in the definition section, the definition of mixed use means a single building containing more than one principal permitted land use, or a single development of more than one building containing more than one principal permitted land use. In a mixed-use development, the different types of land uses are in close proximity, planned as a unified complementary whole, and functionally integrated to the use of vehicular and pedestrian access and parking areas. I guess I'm still confused why going back to the old way is going to protect us from all the ills of the metro district. Because a mixed use could have, I mean, what is the percentage allowed before it's no longer mixed use? That's a legal question. I mean, could it be 90% residential and 10% commercial? Could it be 99% residential and like have a little coffee shop and it's still mixed use?
Mayor, is the question under the previous ordinance?
Yeah, under the previous ordinance.
It's stated in E8, 50%.
Okay, so 50%, if we have 50% of the units built are residential, we could have a metro district. Of square footage. So even with that, I still don't see how those 50%, I just don't see mathematically how it still protects those residents from the ills of the metro district that I've heard argued over the last few months. I could understand going back to something else. I just don't understand why we're re-implementing what existed before. And I'm asking that because some of the arguments hit home with me. And so, but anyway, let's, you get actually, when we're all done, you still have time left. So you, as the person who made the motion, get the opportunity to have last word.
Wait a minute, last word?
No. When she, not now, but when she's got time left, if the person who made the motion has 20 minutes left, or if she hasn't used her whole 20 minutes, she can use the remainder of her time to get the last word. But Dr. Waters or Council, who else is in the queue?
I am. So I guess my biggest concern was really the impact on the individual home buyer. So in regard to the question of the mixed use, do we have any mixed use metro district where we have 50% residential?
No.
So have we had any, yeah, I know that. And have we had any applications come in for any kind of use like that over the years?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Hidalgo Ferry, so we do not currently have any mixed-use metro districts in this city. I believe we have 2 commercial metro districts and 1 residential HMS pending that council recently approved. We do have a application attempting to be submitted for a project that would likely include residential. I could not say at this time if it would meet the 50% threshold, however.
Okay. So, and if it didn't meet that 50% threshold, that would be a project that would be moving forward, correct?
Correct. The next
Okay.
stage for that would be a referral to City Council.
Okay. So I know that we have Village at the Peaks and Harvest Junction, which are commercial metro districts, and I know we have those pieces. My biggest concern is primarily for our individual home buyers, especially with people who have limited income or, like as the majority of us, we're living paycheck to paycheck. So any kind of differing amount in our property taxes would have grave impact on a big chunk of our homeowners. So there was that piece. The other piece is I was looking at the metro district for the Mountain Brook and looking at the ballot issues. So right away, I see ballot issue 5A where they're wanting to vote to increase taxes for $2 million annually or lesser for operations and maintenance, so a mill levy. Another one is in relation to a debrucing. So I think about Proposition CC. It was voted down overwhelmingly. People don't want to go after Tabor. So I'm looking at this piece. So right away, people will be coming into this development with these, if they pass, with these ballot issues of debrucing and increased bonds and mill levy overrides or mill levies. So that was a big concern for me. The other thing, and I don't know if I have all my notes everywhere, I'm sorry. So I guess my biggest concern would be, or if we were to amend this, I would really want to see restrictions on the amount of taxes that would be imposed, and it sounds like we couldn't do that.
Yeah, go ahead. Counselor?
Mayor, council member, Carolyn White again. No, you can limit the maximum mill levy that can be imposed, and you have and you do. There's a
Yes.
maximum limit on Meadowbrook, and most jurisdictions impose some type of maximum cap on the total mill levy that can be imposed.
Okay.
And on the maximum debt that can
The
be
net
issued.
debt, okay.
Those are 2 key components of most service plans.
Okay.
And I would add that if the district subsequently wanted to change those things, before they could go to the voters to ask for approval, they would have to come to council and seek a substantial modification of the service plan.
Okay. So, and I guess for me, I'm not in a hurry to approve more, especially since knowing that our staff, who's already pretty strained, 135 hours of city hours to put together the packet for review for the Mountain Brook. I would really like to see what this particular metro district does for our community and how it impacts the people who live there. I'd like to see that first before we start putting in more applications to our city staff to put together packets to just bring before us. So there are a couple of things that I am that are my reasons for approving to return back to the 2017 ordinance.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Let me just say, should I start myself on my clock? Through my timer?
You've got 10 minutes. I'll let you know when you're up.
Okay, thanks. It would have been, I'm not certain how we're supposed to be going at this. Big ideas or, trying to amend the ordinance. So it's a little, going to be a little random here. But I'm going to go quickly because there are a number of points I'd like to make and then see where this goes. I'm just going to, we hear statements being made. We don't get a chance to challenge one another and say, could you just provide some evidence here? So I'm going to make statements like others have made that I think are true, just like others think their statements are true. I don't think we have discussed the Clover Basin experience near enough. There were some things to learn from the Clover Basin experience that we simply have chosen not to learn. We were given the materials. We had zero discussion that I recall of substance with the question, what happened, what could we learn, and if you're going to do this, how would you apply it to get better going forward? So that hangs out there as a black box as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. There was a statement made about, in that particular case, whether or not requiring other developments to become part of the district would be a material change. I think not. That's a statement that was made. I think it's not an accurate statement, but I would be stand corrected. I think it would require permitting developments within the fire district to be conditional upon their decision to join the fire district, right? That's the way it would work. It wouldn't be a material change. It would be totally consistent with the plan, but an expectation prior to a development being permitted, which I wonder if that's what happened from after 2000. But since we haven't talked about it enough or drilled down, we haven't learned from that experience. I would say in the interest, Mayor Bagley, you talked about, how do you protect the interest of somebody in a metro district where it's 50 or a mixed use district where it's 50%. I would ask the other question: if we regulate this properly, we would protect the residents of the mixed use district, or at least in terms of what their cost of home ownership would be. The bigger question for me is, why would you ignore the people living in a development where 51% of the homes are in a mixed-use development, or 55%, or 60%, or 70%, and let's assume they're all teachers. And in that district, those teachers are going to pay a higher cost of housing than the teachers in this district at 50%. How do we protect them, right? That's as relevant a question, and that was part of the question I think you were asking. What's the magic of 50%? There's no magic in 50%. With all due respect, the statement that business owners would be more willing to serve on boards, I question. And not that we don't all have opinions, but what's the basis for presuming that a business owner either knows more about a metro district or is more willing to serve, who has their hands full running a business? But it seems to me if business owners or homeowners are willing to transition to a metro district board in a mixed-use development, why we'd assume that residents in a 51% mixed-use development wouldn't. Someone's going to have to explain to me. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've heard council members talk about the other council members with whom we have spoken. I have also spoken with council members in other cities who said we wouldn't leave home without a metro district. It's been key to our success as a community. And not that there haven't been horror stories in other places. I get that. But to paint them all with the same brush is like saying every elected official is a lying scoundrel. Well, there's 7 of us sitting up here, and I guess I take exception to being painted that way. But that's how we're painting developers and how we're painting metro districts. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems to me that if we're going to go through the language in this ordinance, language like something may result in controversy or may lessen the prospect of people in a metro district voting for other tax initiatives, I want to say, okay, let's amend it and say, and it may not, because it's pure speculation. It's somebody's opinion based on a Clover Basin experience from 2007 that shows up in this ordinance in language that I could not possibly vote for an ordinance that has an arbitrary number at 50% and language in that like that is a product of somebody's experience with no definition and would be equally as valid for my opinion to be here about what's possible as opposed to what's not possible. So on the rant here, the cost of ownership, if there's a question about the cost of ownership inside and outside a district, now we can take the side-by-side analysis. You're looking at the Mountain Brook plan. You can take the analysis we got and call it BS and say it's just not true. But I challenge any council member to stand behind that claim. These are the data that are available at the time in terms of actual interest rates, the cost of construction loans, how it translated into the cost of a home. So Councilmember Hidalgo-Fehring, if you'd like to see that, I have a copy of it. The analysis resulted not only in a lower cost of owning a home in the district, which allows residents to become eligible who would not have been eligible to purchase a home. So they qualify, number one. Their initial cost of entry is lower, and in this analysis, the cost of home ownership over the life of the mortgage, the savings is $42,000 by being inside a district. So teachers, firemen, first responders, hospitality industry members, or employees qualify for a home that they wouldn't otherwise qualify for and pay less for the cost of home ownership inside the district than outside the district. Now you can call it false, but I would like to see somebody then do their own side-by-side comparison to refute what we're looking at here. So at the end of the day, if we wanted to take a systematic approach here and talk about objectives, the first section on this is objectives. I'd love to take that section and talk about what are our objectives for housing affordability from 0 to 100% of AMI or 110% of AMI. Because the constituents I have an obligation to are not just the ones between 0 and 60. I have an obligation to the residents between 60 and 110 AMI. And I have an obligation to listen to our residents, constituents, who would like to buy a home and can't buy a home in this town because the former policy under this ordinance priced young families out of Longmont. And we still don't have housing stock available for them. So we can talk all we want, but until we get clear on what we're trying to accomplish and get real with the data, we are going to sit here and simply do what I've done, I guess, go on rants and utter our opinions. But I have to say, there's a lot of good to be kept in this ordinance, but there are some changes to make, and somebody ought to start with explaining the magic between 50 and 51%, and the definition of what is or is not mixed use, because it's a pretty broad definition. I'll yield.
You had another 2.5 minutes.
I'll use those 2.5 minutes later.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Christensen, nobody else is in the queue. Would you like to say you'll be the last word before we vote?
Yeah, I have a few questions for Carolyn White. First of all, you said that it was possible for us to restrict eminent domain. Well, the Colorado Supreme Court overturned a previous district court ruling and granted the right of eminent domain in the Carousel Farms Metropolitan District versus Woodcrest Homes, which was a suit brought about by homeowners who didn't want eminent domain, and it went through the district court who said, no, they can't have eminent domain. Then it went to the Supreme Court where they said that it can. So it seems to me that we cannot do that. Let's see, we also talked about the mill levy and how we could restrict that, but when they refinance, it seems to me that all bets are off after that. Is that true? Councilman Waters showed a developer chart showing that I've seen many times, showing how people do much better under metro districts. If you look at the numbers provided by Larimer County, it shows that the average homeowner who is in a metro district pays about 40% higher. Someone who's in than someone who is not in either a metro district or a homeowners association. Somebody who's in a homeowners association pays somewhere in between there. So that's the difference between Larimer County statistics and the developer's statistics. So we all have different sources. We've discussed this before. So here's the question between, I'm not a big fan of special districts for commercial either, because if you look at them, you don't see any mom and pop stores in those. You see only national chains. They're the only ones who can pay the extra taxes. They likewise are paying extra taxes on their business, and that cuts down on their profit. So it's not a particularly wonderful thing, and it certainly isn't good or supportive of small businesses and local businesses. But that's their choice. And furthermore, somebody who's in a commercial district at least has a chance to make money in that district. If you are a resident in a residential district, you don't have a chance to make money off your house. So that is the big difference. That's the difference in allowing, I'm not a big fan of mixed-use developments used as metro districts either. That is the compromise that's in this, that I'm willing to leave in. We put it in for a long time, and that was to forward our goals of creating mixed-use housing and mixed-use developments, which are really quite hard to make a go of it, as we can see with Prospect and with other things. When it's a retail store, not so easy. What some places have done is they put a library in the bottom. That works. Or some business, something that isn't retail, because that is a hardier business that is a little easier to keep going. It's a little more stable. Anyway, so because we are not able to regulate these on the statewide basis, DOLA, as I've said before, is a repository of these service plans and supposedly of the transparency plans, although seemingly they only send them to the Special Districts Association, which is a private organization. Because we can't regulate them on that basis, and because Ms. McCready, who spoke, said that, and said you have to regulate them on a city-by-city basis, and yet we can't really do that either without being sued, because or creating a situation where they don't actually serve as a municipal, as a standalone government, because we've so restricted them. So, as Councilman Rodriguez said, you know, there were some good suggestions, but they're also in here as well as to ways that we could regulate them, but that would restrict them to the point where it would not be possible, and that would put the city at risk of being sued for creating something that can't be used and having sort of a frivolous kind of law going on. So anyway, I would suggest we go ahead and call the question.
All right, we don't need to call the question. The debate's over.
All right.
So let's go ahead. So we're going to go ahead and vote.
Point of personal privilege, please.
But-
Can I
what's that?
can I clarify one statement that was made?
Sure.
Because it was referenced to me. The statement was made that Waters talked about metro districts. I talked about the metro district we approved, the Mountain Brook development. That was the analysis. I didn't make a general statement.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
one more thing.
Uh-huh.
I noticed here that the statement was made that regard to the fire station, under material modifications, number 2, it says any change of district boundaries would be qualified as a material modification. So if they got people got other districts from without the boundaries, they would have to bring it back to City Hall. To City Council would constitute a material modification.
So,
All right, thank you. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a vote. So the motion is to basically remove the current ordinance and replace it with 4.10.010 as in our packet, which is identical to the previous ordinance.
So it would come back for 2 readings.
Then it will come back for, if this is to put it on for first reading. And so we're going to vote, and then I'm going to propose a change in council procedure to make it a little easier as we deal with the first reading. But let's vote first. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Aye.
nay.
nay?
All right, and that's nay for me too. So I believe it was Councilmember Christensen, Councilmember Peck, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, and Councilmember Hidalgo Faring voting for, and Councilmembers Waters, and Martin, and myself against. So what I would propose is that council members, now that we've given staff clear direction, what I would propose is so this is a motion, I move that we change the rules of council, or the operating rules of council, so that next time rather than making motions willy-nilly, to use the term of art, what we do is put it in an email, and your suggested changes to the ordinance, and send it to the city manager and myself prior to the meeting, so that we have an idea of what amendments are going to be suggested, rather than, so we can organize, discuss, put it in the packet prior to coming to the meeting and having a free-for-all. Because I imagine there will be tweaks and whatnot to the amendment, or do you want to do that now?
To the amendment?
To what I'm saying, to the ordinance. So we're putting it on, this just is going on for first reading. This is just direction to staff. This doesn't mean anything tonight other than what we're putting on the agenda. We still have to go through a first and second reading, which means motions will be allowed to make amendments, both at the first and second reading. So rather than having a big, long meeting, I'm proposing that we actually put in our motions for amendments now, and that way we can deal with them in an organized, orderly fashion. It will allow us to, it will force us to think through things rather than, like I said, just bring it up. Does that make sense? Councilmember Christensen?
You're suggesting that the amendments be put in the ordinance?
No, what I'm saying
just
is
that we have them listed?
What I'm saying is if no one suggests an amendment
Okay.
between now and the first ordinance, we're just going to vote on this.
Okay.
What it means is that if you have an amendment that you'd like to make, it needs to be done in advance with thought and provided to the city manager and myself so that we can convey it to the rest of council so we have an opportunity to review the amendments rather than showing up and saying, oh, hey, by the way, I want to change this. Or, hey, by the way, I want to change this. I'd just like to see, some organization, or else maybe nobody else has amendments. But I'm assuming that people will be offering amendments to the ordinance on the first and then also second reading. I'm just trying to think of next time what's going to happen. What do you
So-
guys think of that idea? Councilmember Peck? Councilmember Peck?
So Mayor Bagley, if we are offering suggestions to Harold and you for changing the ordinance, how is that going to be transparent so the public knows what it is we are?
That's what I mean. It will go in the packet. So what we'll do is
I see,
we'll do
okay.
it. We'll do a packet update so that, for example, let's suppose that it says, in general, the city will consider the formation of commercial districts. Let's suppose an amendment is to be offered that says the city will consider the formation of commercial districts so long as there is an extraordinary benefit found by city council to the city. That would be suggested to the city manager. I don't plan on making that amendment, by the way. I just am looking at I'm just throwing that out as an example. And if I don't make it before council meeting, it means that I can't make it. I'm trying to instill a little bit of discipline. If we want to change the ordinance, the amendment would be made prior to the next meeting so that we have an opportunity to reflect, think, and prepare our comments rather than just all of this. What about this? What about this? What about this? Councilmember Waters?
So it would be, we would have done that work prior to the packet being placed in our Dropbox?
Well, when's the first ordinance coming out? Next Tuesday, right?
No,
or 2 weeks from now.
The next regular session is on the 25th of February, so
we'd have a week to get our comments.
if you wanted to do that, we would need that by the 14th.
So a week.
Week and a half.
So in response, I'm willing to do that. So some of us are going to spend a little more time getting ready for the meeting, but that's fine.
I'm sure.
That's fine. I'm willing to do that. But what I need then, I need a calendar that shows me the deadline or due date for, if I assume we're doing this not just for this ordinance but going forward.
No, just right now, just on this, not forever. Just on this ordinance will be presented as on first reading on February 2 weeks from now.
So this is a one-off.
This is a one-off. The next meeting on Tuesday, myself and Harold meet for the agenda for the next agenda comes out the day after or that next week. So that gives us this week to make any proposed amendments to this ordinance. What I'm trying to avoid is having a 6-hour council meeting where we just start throwing out amendments. It would force us to think, discuss, review.
I get it. That's fine. I just want to know my deadline for getting my
Next Tuesday.
package of, or
right?
my list of
Next
amendments
Tuesday or
in.
Wednesday?
The packet for the 18th is, we try to get that out on the 12th.
Right.
So this is a 25th meeting, so we will try to get the packet out
2 weeks from now.
on the 19th, which is why I said if council wants to do this, the 14th would be the deadline to at least, and that would give me, I'd rather have the 13th, but I could live with the 14th, which would give me the 17th and the 18th to kind of put it together, so it could then be placed in the packet that goes out on the 19th for the meeting on the 25th.
All right, I'm happy. I just wanted to know my deadline. The only other comment I would make is, Mayor Bagley, it seems to me that another possibility is to save a 6-hour meeting would be to do what somebody suggested here tonight, and that is if we wanted to bring as I've said, there's a lot to agree with in this ordinance. If we wanted to bring an ordinance together that we could all agree on, there's a way to do that, but it doesn't. You're not going to push it to the next regular meeting. It would be to bring a group together and find where the common ground is, and find a place we could all stand together around the objectives we're trying to accomplish. But if we're going to just amend it to death, I'll submit or pepper it with amendments. I'll prepare my packet or list.
Councilmember Martin?
2 things. First of all, I prefer Dr. Waters' suggestion that we have a session where we discuss potential amendments and compromises rather than do a conventional first reading where all the amendments have been submitted in advance. I think that makes more sense. I feel like I need to point out that most of the suggestions for making metro districts safer that Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez initially liked and then began to fear that they would invalidate the metro districts, most of those are in this ordinance that we're considering now. Almost all of them are already there as protections, and they're not that different from the suggestions that I made. The only difference is they only apply to mixed-use districts that have at least 50% non-residential. Okay, let's bargain over that percentage if we're going to have a bargain, and it'd be a lot simpler. But I'm not finished. The other thing.
Excuse me.
Well, I don't like
It's
having
okay.
the
It's
hand
okay.
waving in my
You still,
face.
Councilmember Martin, you still have the floor.
I do
Continue.
still have the floor. The other suggestion that I would like to make, if we're going to have your first reading procedure, Mr. Mayor, is that we have to also dispense with this 2 rounds and you're out. Because what's happening a lot here, I went through this in advance and did the math on all of the letters submitted, on the statements made in the ordinance. I read the Clover Basin Metro District Service Plan about 18 times. And yet what happens is that if somebody speaks after me and says something false that I can refute, I can't refute it because it's not going to be my turn to speak again. And if we're going to have a substantive debate, then we have to be able to rebut. Because otherwise, people can say anything they want, and the council will act on it as if it's true. Well, what if it's not true?
Welcome to politics.
I'd like to fix that, sir.
All right, Council, are you done?
Yeah, but I want you to answer me.
We'll talk in a second. Councilmember Peck?
I just want to remind you that we've already voted on this. It is going to first ordinance.
It is.
We are not voting on whether we're going to have another debate.
But we're
So-
voting on a procedural change.
Hold on. Councilmember
No.
Peck has the floor. Councilmember Peck has the floor.
And Mayor Bagley, did you get a second for your motion?
No, I didn't. So.
Second.
Okay.
I call the question.
You have to have, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. It's not debatable. You need a supermajority of council in order to call the question. So, all in favor of having a vote on my motion, which was, we are going to require proposed amendments be prepared in advance, rather than just coming to council on first ordinance and presenting them then, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
All right, so we'll call the question. Let's go ahead and vote. So all in favor of my motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so basically go ahead and,
I've got a request.
yeah, go ahead.
If we use the 14th as a deadline, I would appreciate it if you do that. You put it in a Word document and attach that Word document and send it to me, because it would be easier to then aggregate and attach to the agenda.
And
I will send this out via
we,
email.
Can we make it, let's do noon on the 14th?
Yep.
I assume you have a date that night?
Well, my
Right,
son's,
so
my
let's-
son's
let's-
getting his wisdom teeth out, so yeah.
I'm just saying, I mean, let's don't make it midnight, let's make it noon to be respectful to staff.
I mean, if we could
That's
get
all
it
right.
in early in the morning in a Word document, then that lets me do what I need to quickly.
Okay, all right,
And
cool.
I will send out a calendar appointment with that. It'll be early on the 14th on that appointment.
All right, let's move on. Okay, let's move on to 5B, 2020 legislative bills recommended for city council position.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, and I have 5 bills for your consideration tonight. If you'd like, as I did last week, I'll just read through them as well as what the recommendation is, and then you're welcome to vote on them all or bifurcate them, whichever you'd like to do. So the first one is House Bill 201162 concerning a prohibition.
Thank you, Ms. White.
Against retail food establishments' distribution of an expanded polystyrene product for use as a container for ready-to-eat food. So as you all asked our legislators during our legislative dinner, polystyrene is styrofoam, and this basically phases in a prohibition of styrofoam. I want for you to note that while this bill does support the sustainability plan, it might put an undue burden on our local retail restaurants, and so we are suggesting back to the legislators that there's some level of relief in that, to be able to help small businesses be able to purchase different types of containers. So because nonetheless, staff still recommends that the City Council support House Bill 201162. House Bill 201163 concerning the management of single-use products, very similar. So this is a similar prohibition of single-use products like straws, plastic bags. And we have the same concerns about people needing to purchase alternative types of containers, but still, because it supports our sustainability efforts, staff recommends that the City Council support House Bill 201163. Senate Bill 20-017 concerning a requirement that the High Performance Transportation Enterprise include information about public-private partnerships in its annual report to the Legislative Committee. Basically requires additional transparency for these types of organizations, and since that is, I think, a good thing as far as us making sure that what's happening in the transportation enterprise funds are transparent and above board, the staff recommends the City Council supports Senate Bill 2017. Senate Bill 2151. This is the administration of the Regional Transportation District. At this time, staff has not finished analyzing all the impacts of the bill, so we are not asking for a position, but once the staff is finished with that analysis, we'll be bringing that forward to you. I wanted you to know it's on the radar. We are looking at it. Phil is reading it and trying to figure out what would be the best course of action. So as soon as he is able to do that, then I'll get back to you. And then Senate Joint Resolution 20-003 concerning the approval of water project revolving fund eligibility list. This is something that the council has supported every year for the last 10 years. There are some water projects that are Longmont projects, and this does obviously help the furthering of clean water in our state, which is a good thing. So the staff recommends City Council support SJR 20-003.
I actually move that we instruct staff to notify our state representatives that we support all of these, but for Senate Bill 20-151, which staff is still analyzing.
Second?
Any debate, discussion on the issues? Councilmember Christensen?
Since I'm the representative of this, I am a little concerned about the growth of RTD thing, regional transportation districts, and encouraging those. Wait a minute.
We're not supporting that.
Yeah, we're leaving that one off.
Oh, that's right, we did. This is a different thing. Never mind. Never mind.
That's all right.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no one else in the queue, let's go ahead and vote. Supporting all of these, but Senate Bill 20-151. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Say nay. All right. The motion passes unanimously. And then also, I forgot to, just so you know, on the, I'm sorry, Michelle, but on the motion before, I did not read on the motion to call the question, Councilmember Peck's question. It was 6 of us 4 with Councilmember Martin against. And it was, I believe it was a unanimous vote on requiring a proposed amendment coming back. All right, sorry. Okay, cool. Good job, Sandy.
Thank you.
All right, time for mayor and council comments with these cool new microphones. Compliments of, probably Scott Converse and not anyone. But anyway, thank you, Scott. All right, Councilmember Christensen.
Tomorrow, Fred Wilson will be laid to rest. And Fred Wilson was on city council for, I believe, 13 years, and then he was mayor for 4 years. He was probably the most interesting guy who's ever on city council. He had lots of different jobs. He loved people. He has many different skills and hobbies. And what I really liked about him, which inspired me, is somebody interviewed him once, and he said, "I have walked every block of this city." And I thought, what a guy. You know, I think he really loved Longmont. And so, adios, Fred. You did a good job.
All right, anyone else? Any comments?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you. I have 2 things. One, I would like to reiterate that our debates are not functional because we cannot refute one another's arguments. And I want to call upon the mayor to seriously consider a procedural change that will fix that. Because as it is now, people can make unfounded assertions, and they are accepted often by other council members and almost always by the public as fact. And I think it's only fair that at least other council members should have a shot at presenting the other side of the argument. And if it draws out the debate, it draws out the debate. And maybe people will get smarter about making statements that can be easily refutable.
And sorry, go ahead.
And I do have another thing to say, but if you'd like to address that
Yeah,
first.
I was just gonna say, so as mayor, believe it or not, I try to follow the rules. And so oftentimes I let us get a little loosey-goosey, you know?
Mhm.
But when there's a topic of, I mean, I could tell, I didn't need to come tonight. I could have sent a memo, I could have spent 5 minutes, typed up a memo, and I could have told you exactly what was gonna happen tonight, given everybody's previous comments, talks. I mean, it was pretty predictive. And so Robert's rules said if you want to make a motion and you know, I can make a motion and propose an alternative process, you know, we could alter that as a council. It's just that I figure when we're dealing with issues that are substantive and high conflict, I find safety in just going back to Robert's rules and saying, you know, the process is everybody gets a chance to speak before you get a chance to speak first, and then everybody gets a chance to speak before you get your second chance, because we all might have something to say. And then also it says you get a total of 20 minutes, but you only get 2, and the person who makes the motion gets last word so long as they do not use their full 20 minutes. And so it's that's kind of the, I mean, that's the
I've read it.
I mean, I'd rather have it shorter than 10, but I don't change it because that's not my prerogative. And so if somebody on council has a better way of doing it than Mr. Roberts, then we can change. And I could even, and again, I do try to be, I mean, I do allow, as the chair, conversation, like now, you know, there's conversation that occurs, but when we're dealing with, I mean, everybody on this council, I think, has an opinion on metro districts, you know, and facts that we differ with each other.
Facts don't differ, sir.
I'm just saying, or interpretation.
Opinions do.
Yeah, I'm saying, but and so I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't like the format. It's just that it's the format that this city decided back 100 years ago to follow, which if somebody wants to change, bring forth the motion and we'll talk about it. But I, as the mayor, I'm one of 7.
I was hoping that as the mayor, we could confer on what would be a workable motion to bring forward.
And if you want to bring forward a motion, I'm sure we would talk about, I just don't know of a better way to do it. Because if we said, okay, well, if you want to say and you want, it would never end. It would literally never end. But I know what you're saying, Marcia. I know what you're saying. I feel for you. I hear you. So what else? You're still on the floor.
Well, I think the alternative is that we fact check publicly after every council meeting, and that'd be fun. So maybe I'll do that.
There you go.
Yeah. The other thing is that I would like to see the staff bring forward a report on the sequence of events that followed the adoption of the Clover Basin Service Plan, including the annexations, the subsequent permitting of buildings and developments that fell under the Fire Station 5 service area, and what was considered and what was not in terms of annexing those new developments into the fire protection district, if there were any, because there's language in the service plan that assumes that that will happen. And I was not satisfied.
That's a hint.
I was not satisfied with the answers that the staff gave. I usually am, but tonight I was very much not. So I'd like to see some more detail about that.
So I guess so let's talk tomorrow. Can we talk tomorrow about putting that on the agenda? And the question I'm going to have is, how much staff time will that take? And would it detract from
Don't we have to take a vote?
from other? We don't need to vote. I have the prerogative to put it on. I'm not putting it on unless the city manager says that that's, like, so during this section, mayor and council comments, we're not permitted to make motions. If you want it on the agenda, the appropriate time is to do it at the beginning of the meeting. I can do it on my own prerogative. I'm going to ask tomorrow, let Harold have the opportunity to talk to staff. If that's something that's going to take, I mean, if they can pull up something and do it in an hour or two, that's one thing. But if it's going to take weeks, then no. So, I mean, so
Well,
can we
if
just
it could
talk
be
about
done
it
in
tomorrow?
an hour or two, I'd have stated it this evening instead of.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. So we'll just talk about it tomorrow, if that's okay, Harold? So just heads up. Cool. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. I would like to thank staff, specifically Karen Roney, Olga Bermudez, Christina Sims, and Jenny Diaz, for putting on the No Small Matter event. It was a success, and it was a great segue into our discussion that we're going to have at the retreat about the I just lost my train of thought.
You were saying thank you to everyone. Say, I love you, everyone. Thank you.
About our preschool and early education visions for the city. So thank you.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes, I do.
You're on council. It's time for comments.
I do have something to say. So in regard to this preschool, the No Small Matter, one thing I noticed is the people in attendance are all in the preschool profession, but we have many constituents with preschool age children, so I would really encourage the public to get involved with the, who was the organization that did that? I can't remember what their name is. It's not Epic.
NLC.
NLC, the NLC, the Neighborhood Leadership Council. Is that right? No.
National League of
National-
Cities.
National League of Cities, NLC, that one. No, but who put on the movie?
NLC.
NLC, oh, okay. Well, sorry, it's late, I'm tired.
I think the movie was produced by NLC.
No, but who was the organization that put
We
it
did.
together?
It was
City
the
of Longmont.
city.
City of Longmont.
The city of
Yeah, so
Longmont.
it was, because Olga had presented it. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. But yeah, so I would encourage the public to really get involved in what's happening with early childhood education. And we really want to hear from our young parents and what they need, what our constituents need. So, thanks.
All right, anything else? That's okay, Councilmember
It
Christensen.
is?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just thought of one other event that happened this week. There was a really wonderfully well-attended forum by some of the candidates running for Senate, and it was sponsored by the Latinx community, and it had to do, and many questions were asked about of these candidates, how they would support the Latinx community, and is incredibly well attended, and that shows how much enormous enthusiasm there is in this town for issues regarding the Latinx community. So I thought it was terrific. Thanks.
All right, great. Aaron, anything? No words of wisdom as we conclude? All right, great. All right, everybody. All in all, a pretty good meeting, so thank you. All right, city manager.
Show you all a 30-second video on the census. We're trying to keep it out for the
All right,
community.
cool.
So,
In America, we all count, no matter where we call home, how we worship, or who we love. And the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Because this is the count that informs where hundreds of billions in funding will go each year for things like education, healthcare, and programs that touch us all. Shape your future. Start here. Learn more at 2020census.gov.
I believe that was less than 30 seconds, so good job.
Exactly 30 seconds.
Eugene?
No comments, Mayor.
Oh, that was nice. All right. Would you like to make a motion, Councilmember
I
Peck?
would love to. I move that we adjourn.
All right. All right. Anybody, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.